Kotwani, Sip Raju, Sip Rico, Sip Paratyama, Sip Sudeep, Sip Samatma, Sip Atmatray, Sip Bliss, Sip Chandrakant, Sip Gautam, Sip Kundan, Sip Roop. And I don't find the others who are, I'm not getting anybody else who are on video. Welcome to the call. Administrator, let us start. Administrator, what is the, your laptop is, yeah. How do we know there is consciousness? How do we know there is consciousness? So this is there something like consciousness? Science questions, there is no consciousness. So how do you know it exists? Where does the consciousness come from? Where does it go? Is it there? Is it not there? So this is what I want to ask you all today. It's a very interesting conversation. Little, not a normal kind of conversation. But remember this, in life, enlightenment is not an ordinary subject. Enlightenment is a subject that is meant only for 1% of the people in the world. Today, I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but I was in a plane for 3 hours from Amritsar to Bangalore. And for 3 hours, I was talking to a pilot. The pilot asked me questions for 3 hours. So maybe we should take that as one more subject of discussion, and I'm sure he will join us on the Zoom call one of these days, the pilot, and we will then probably, I was on the call, but I was on the question answer with him for 3 hours. You people, sometimes you struggle to ask me a question, one question or two questions, but how did that pilot, and the pilot was new to the subject, it's not that the pilot had great knowledge on the subject, and one after the other, the pilot asked me questions for 3 hours. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to take up this Zoom call, but after my cup of coffee, I just landed, I had a cup of coffee, and we are back on the subject of consciousness. So who would like to be the champion for today? It's not an easy subject. Who would like to ask? This is Chandra Guptan. I have a new person, Chandra Guptan. What is your question, sir? Chandra Guptan, are you going to unmute and speak your question? Chandra Guptan, is it a new person or is it administrator? You get the next person on till we get Chandra Guptan to come on. Atmatra, yes, sir. Atmatra,
good morning. Sir, good evening. Sir,
good evening,
consciousness, how to measure consciousness or how much we have acquired consciousness, how to measure it?
The question today's subject is, how do we know there is consciousness?
Oh.
Science is questioning the existence of consciousness. According to science, there is nothing like consciousness. So what is the consciousness? Is it there? Science does not agree. I hope you know that, right? Science does not agree on consciousness. Science said, oh, what are you talking? What nonsense? What is it, consciousness? This science is questioning. So I'm asking you, do you know, is there consciousness? How do you know there's consciousness? What do you know about consciousness? Come on. So let us start.
Sure, sir.
So wait, you're only asking clarity, or you have anything more to ask, sir? Chandra? Okay. Yes, sir. Atmatra, please start.
Yes, sure, sir. Science cannot define consciousness, but our intellect has power. We can understand we are in consciousness or in Maya. We can.
No, so my question is, how can we be sure there is consciousness or there is no consciousness? Do you have any idea? How can we make out there is consciousness? What is conscious? Okay, at least start with what is consciousness? Because science says there's no consciousness.
Yes.
So, Atmatra, what do you think about consciousness?
Consciousness is the state of being.
No, I didn't speak it louder, please.
Means I'm not the body, mind, and ego.
No, that is realization. Consciousness Consciousness is something else. Let us ask Ashok Nichani, then Samatma, then Bliko. Ashok Nichani.
Shivam Sarji.
Shivam, sir.
Sir, consciousness is what we think at the present moment. For example, I am traveling. There are three methods of traveling. I am flying by air, or by road driving, or traveling by train. So when I am in the plane, I am in the flight, I know that I am flying from Bangalore to US. I am in my consciousness that I am not driving, I am flying. Using my consciousness, nothing else in my mind.
Okay, but the science calls that awareness. Science just says it is awareness. But consciousness, is there something like consciousness? Let us see. Thank you, Ashok. You have broken the ice. At least you have given us some.
One more
startup.
point, Sirji. One more
Yes,
point.
yes, please.
For
Tell me, sir.
example, one small child
Yeah,
who is about 2 years old.
yeah.
That child, that small infant, he will not be having knowing what is memory, what is I, what is I.
But does that child have consciousness, or the child does not have consciousness?
He has, Sirji, if he's sleeping, if you just touch him, he may open his eyes.
Okay, good. So Ashok, I can give you certification that you know the meaning of consciousness. So good. If you have some more points, please come back, Ashok. We are going
One
to
more
ask
will come from the memory.
Yes. Yeah, go on, continue, Ashok.
One other consciousness comes from the memory, what your memory tells you.
How is that consciousness, Ashok?
You're talking in the using the memory, not the like you're using your senses and the memory.
But is the memory consciousness? Memory is memory. Memory is not consciousness. We cannot say memory is consciousness. No, we cannot say that.
Memory is I and may.
No, but memory is what other points you said, I agree. Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely right. But memory is not consciousness.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Samatma. Yes, Samatma. Let us try to understand, all of us today, what is this concept? Because today we are discussing a subject which science does not agree. Science says, like for example, rebirth. Science says bullshit, man, or nonsense. What are you talking? Samatma.
Shivoham.
Shivoham.
So when you enjoy your own company and you're living in this moment and you are giving 100% to whatever you are doing at that time, and also you are very comfortable with the silence around you and like you're comfortable being in silence, where you can even hear the tiny word of sip, whatever is happening in your body. That is your in consciousness. Then you can hear what your body is telling you.
But it's very, what you're saying is very relative, not objective. What you're saying can't be objectified. It's not something that can be scientifically explained. It's a feeling.
No, consciousness cannot be explained scientifically.
So that's what we are saying. How can you explain in the best possible way? Bliko. Yes, Bliko.
Shivoham, everybody.
Thank you, Samatma. Yes, Shivoham.
So, the awareness is what we feel through our senses all the time, minus our feeling and the object. Means the experience with the senses is we call awareness, but that awareness, if we deeply investigate and minus the object or feeling associated with the senses, that is awareness. Means a dead body has all the senses. A body, one person die, all the senses are there.
Yeah.
But there is no function.
Beautiful. Now you're coming to the point. You're coming to the point. You're saying, see, look at what Bliko is saying. Bliko is saying, a person is alive. A person is alive. He can see, he can smell, he can touch, he can feel. He has got the level of consciousness. Suddenly the person dies. What happens?
All the senses
The person, we often say, becomes unconscious. But when you become unconscious, do you lose your consciousness? Do you lose consciousness? So Liko says when you die, the person has no consciousness. So this is one good present. Anything more you want to speak about Liko on this point, or that's it?
No, that's all. This experience
good
which
point.
we.
No, good point. Thank you. Gautam, you want to say something on consciousness?
Yeah, see, Per.
Yes.
I just want to add a small point.
Yes.
Just want to add a small point. When we are conscious, we forget everything.
No, conscious. What do you mean by conscious?
Yeah, when
No, we are talking about consciousness. We are conscious. Everybody in this call is conscious. Everybody in this call is conscious of the call. And there may be some people in this call, they may be in the call, but if their audio video is switched off, maybe they are having chai. That means they're not conscious. But Sunil Chittal, I can see he's conscious. Ru Mataji, I can see she's conscious. Gautam, I can see conscious. Rekha Parwani, I can see conscious. But the people, Ashok Michani, I can see they are conscious. But what is consciousness? Sunil Chittal, I was conscious that Sunil Chittal was picking something from Google and pasting information on consciousness. Sunil, am I right? You were Googling and finding some information. Am I right? Or it is from your own?
No,
yes,
my
Sunil
own
Chittal.
observation. My own observation.
You are saying some very high level conversation. So समझाओ क्या बोल रहे थे आप?
Now, I was saying the consciousness is a basic substratum. Science is always done in the subject-object split.
But you are
In the
using some new
20th century,
terms.
now the science has started working on it. There are a
What do
lot
they call
of
that?
consciousness studies.
What's it called?
What is it?
What is it
They are
called?
they are starting with the hard problem of consciousness.
No, but
And
you
now
gave-
they have
you put a
started.
term.
There are two
You
concepts:
pasted
big
it-
C
you
and
pasted
little
a
c.
term. You pasted a term in your text. You pasted a term.
Yeah, big C and little c. The big
Huh?
C concept is basically they are now trying to realize what our Vedanta is telling. Yes, consciousness is the basic substratum, and
Yeah.
from there, based on the probabilities and the human observer, because in quantum theory there is a question that everything is a wave, but moment you observe, it becomes a particle. So the observer plays a very important role, and the consciousness, evolves itself. And otherwise, on the other hand, the biologists are saying there is little c. That is, consciousness is nothing but a product of the brain. So basically, today the science has come to a level of finding the neural correlates. I feel hungry is the first person experience. The science today can only find out by looking at the neural correlates. See, Baba, this fellow is hungry. But the first person experience, still they are not able to get it. And they will never get it, sir, because science works in the realm of subject-object split.
The science is working only on physics.
Exactly.
Science is
Physical is
yeah.
working, the subject, they think the universe is outside and they are not looking at inside.
Yeah.
But the time will come, like how Vedanta rishis realize. So science is now starting to find sense in what our Vedanta says. They don't believe in religion because religion is a system of thought. Science is also a system of thought. So now when the system evolves on its own, automatically science will, it's why now religion and science are coming together.
Okay. But we are honestly, we are not trying to get into the scientific aspect of it. We are just trying to understand whether there is something called consciousness or
Yes,
not.
consciousness is nothing but the observer.
But it's not the observer to science. They don't accept the word consciousness yet. In scientific,
The studies have started now. So they have just started about a decade back, or maybe 2 decades back, and things
but
are
they're not
getting evolved.
They're not accepted it.
No. Whoever is accepted is thrown out of the community.
Whoever is accepted is thrown out of the community.
All physicists, there are 2 clans.
Thank you, Sunil. Ru Mataji, क्या बोलना है आपको?
Guruji, I feel consciousness is a stage जिसमें सच का एहसास होता है इंसान को. When he is with the truth, उस समय और उसे कुछ नहीं पता चलता. Only he can see the truth of the life, realities.
Ru Mataji, ये बात नहीं है, Ru Mataji. Consciousness and enlightenment are 2 separate subjects. जिसको enlightenment ना है, उनको भी consciousness है. ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ enlightened person को consciousness है. हर जीव को consciousness है. There is consciousness. Consciousness is that sense of awareness, that sense of feeling. For example, science is still not yet been able to define, I think, about what exactly is feelings. Science is struggling to understand the meaning of I am feeling. What is this feeling? Okay, so Administrator, do you have some comments from people? You would like to read out some comments before I get into what I want to explain today?
Yes, sir. We
Yes.
have some comments.
Yes, please.
Bliss says, consciousness, it's mindfully choosing something mindfully despite the positive and negative consequences.
Okay, correct. So just the bliss, suppose Bliss has got a point. I want to explain this bliss point Bliss has brought. So Bliss, you were going to do something. Suppose you were in the supermarket. You were in the supermarket and you, as you passed by, there were some very good strawberries. And in your consciousness, you decided to buy strawberries. In your consciousness, you were conscious. Then you went in the supermarket and you saw chocolates and biscuits and you saw many things and you saw bread and jam and noodles and you took a supermarket trolley and you picked everything. Then you are trying to scratch your head. What was it I wanted to pick? What was it I wanted to pick, but you cannot remember it? It happens like that. Sometimes you cannot remember it. So you go home. After you go home and you make toast and bread and you're eating the bread and I was supposed to bring strawberries. It comes back into your consciousness. You experience that or not? So this is something that comes very often. Don't you feel there's something that's in your consciousness? Suddenly you forget it. Girish, don't you feel like that? Then you do like this. Don't you do like this? Oh, what is that? What is that point? Oh, how many of you remember doing this tuck, 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 tuck to your head? What is that? It was there in your consciousness. But the mind came and the mind bombarded you with thoughts and it got lost in thought. Then when the mind settled down, when everything settled down and the consciousness was still, that came back. Yes or not? You have had that experience or not? So let us understand the meaning of consciousness. Because there is consciousness. For example, suppose Sudeep Bhargava. Suppose you are sleeping in your bedroom. And I say, Sudeep, no reply. Sudeep, no reply. Because you are fast asleep, you're snoring. I said, Sudeep, my son. You get up. Because there was consciousness in you. But suppose I was screaming, Sudeep, Sudeep in my office, and you were sleeping in your house. Then will you wake up? Because your consciousness was in your house, not in my office. Therefore, there is something called consciousness. This conscious, Ashok Nichani touched this point, I think. Ashok Nichani said that if you touch a child, the child may be sleeping. Although I don't know what exactly Ashok spoke, but he touched. I appreciated the point. If you touch a person, they may be fast asleep, but they wake up. That is a sign of consciousness. So, my dear friends, and then who else said one very good point? Somebody said, Bliko said, the moment you die, then there is no consciousness. Where does this does a dead person have consciousness? My dear friends, there's a dead person, a person who is no more, a dead person. Do they have consciousness? There's no consciousness. So we must try to understand what is this consciousness. Let us hear from the others. Girish, Ashok Nichani, Sunil Chittal, Rekha Parwani. Yes, please.
The changes which we perceive cannot be perceived unless there is an unchanging base or foundation. This unchanging base or foundation is called consciousness.
No, but that is, you're saying, you're trying to give a definition. But try to explain, Girish, try to explain what is this consciousness which science is struggling with? What is this consciousness?
Science says it is a product of the body, but
Product of
spirituality
the-
says
Yeah.
it is not a product of body or mind.
Not
It is
mind.
independent.
Science doesn't talk of mind. Science says it's the product of the brain.
Brain.
Am I right?
Yes.
So is consciousness just a product of the brain?
No.
Because the
It
brain
is all
may be dead.
pervading, the moment the brain is beginningless
dead,
and endless.
the moment the brain is dead, the brain is there, but there is no consciousness.
That is consciousness and unconsciousness of the body state, not the consciousness which is a substratum of everything appearing.
So how will you explain this to a scientific person?
Something cannot emerge out of nothing.
Correct.
Everything we can see, that is appearing and disappearing in one reality. That is called consciousness.
So Girish is giving a very high level experience. I don't know whether you're understanding or not, but Girish is saying everything that is happening in our consciousness. Everything, even the sunrise, the sunset, everything is happening. If there was no consciousness, then we would not experience the sunrise and the sunset. Everything, and science is not able to understand this. Science thinks that we are machines. The human body is like a machine. Science does not know the meaning of soul. For example, I don't think science accepts the meaning of soul. What soul? Will science accept soul? What is the soul business? What is spirit business? Science does not accept. Because they say that is philosophy, that is spirituality. They discount it. Thank you, Girish. Ashok Pichani. Rekha Parwani, and then we come back to Sunil Chittan. Ashok Pichani.
Shivam Sarji, I have another example.
Yes, sir.
Suppose a person has met with an accident.
Yes.
And the doctor says he's unconscious now.
Yes.
But his eyes are open, he's able to see, but he's not able to recognize anyone or talk. Then after a few days, after recovery, he comes into consciousness. He is knowing everything and recognizing everyone, and is feeling that he's perfectly all right now.
So you're mixing 2 points. What you're saying is correct, but you're mixing up one point of biological conscious, being conscious biologically, and in that biological conscious state of being conscious, that man had consciousness is what you're saying. So you're bringing two different aspects of it. But
yes,
well,
yes.
Well said, Rekha Parwani. Thank you, Ashok. Rekha Parwani.
Shivoma Mayor,
Shivam.
listen, everyone is in consciousness because there's a proof, like supposing somebody is doing something wrong, they act. So that person is in consciousness, realizing that he's doing something wrong. So that is proof, like there is consciousness.
So
Only
that is you're talking about conscientiousness, conscience. I think you're not talking about consciousness. You're talking about a conscience. Conscience is realizing good, bad, did I do? So my conscience is pricking me. That is not what we are talking about. See, consciousness is, Rekha Parwani, the first cell. When we are the zygote is formed, we don't know, we can't test it, right? But the awareness or the aliveness has already come.
yes.
So, till we are alive, till the last breath, we are conscious. Ashok Mushani spoke also, suppose somebody is dying.
Yes.
They may be dying, but they are conscious, right? Unless biologically their state of being unconscious. It's a different. Then whether there is consciousness or that consciousness is biologically not there. So we have to understand in spirituality, like I told you, the person may be fast asleep, but if you call them, there is consciousness.
Yes,
There's a consciousness, they will wake up.
Yes.
So, and when a dead person, you call them 100 times, you poke them also like glycogen. No, there is no consciousness. But science doesn't. Science says that person became dead, full stop. But science does not accept that this consciousness has left. So this is what Blicko brought about. I hope you all have understood what Blicko said. But Blicko
Yes.
only brought about leaving of consciousness. What
Hmm.
about arriving of consciousness?
Hmm.
Is the consciousness,
Hmm.
AiR, we lost you.
does it come only when the child starts crying? Consciousness is there. Is the child conscious even before that?
Yes.
Probably the child is in the mother's womb, the child probably has consciousness already because the child is alive. The child is very much alive, moving, kicking. So child has consciousness. That's why
Yes.
some people worry.
Hmm.
Some people worry how the child was inside the womb. How the
Yeah.
child must be feeling inside the womb. Because the child has got consciousness.
Yes.
How the child must be feeling.
Hmm.
Sir,
So we don't know. These are things which to blink. Sunil Chitan.
Shivam
Sir.
Guruji. I
Yes,
would
Sunil
like
Chitan.
to
Sir,
make a
can
small
I interrupt?
distinction.
Sir,
You have to put your hand up.
Can-
Whoever's trying to speak, please raise your hand so we can call your name.
okay, sir. Okay.
Please raise your hand. As if they're in Zoom, you can just raise your hand and we will call your name. Sunil Chitan.
Yeah, Shivam Guruji. Sir,
Shivam.
what I feel is people mistake consciousness with the sentiency, sentient and insentient. Whereas spiritually, there is very clear distinction between life, jiva, with jivatma, sentiency. All organic matters have sentiency. If they have brains, they are able to interpret and be. But in spirituality, consciousness is there in insentient as well as sentient. In
So does a dog?
Advaita, that's the reason why we say we are not the body. How we realize that we are conscious, not because we have a perception in the brain or your, unconscious or conscious because of coma and all that. All this is a state of the mind which is forming part of our mind activity or brain activity. I would like to humbly submit saying we understand consciousness as when there is no body, where is no mind, where is no prana, still consciousness prevails. So we want to make a distinction between
No.
awareness and
When
consciousness.
there's no body,
So even a stone has consciousness, but problem is it
when
doesn't
there's no
have a
body, how
mind
the conscious?
because it's insentient. It is not having a mind and life.
When there is no,
It cannot express.
no, Sunil Chitan, when there's no body, how can there be consciousness?
But that's what we say. SIP is supreme
No,
immortal
there will be
power.
SIP. No, there will be SIP. But the
So,
consciousness is there only with
yeah,
the body. Without the body, there can't be.
No, biological consciousness will not be there because the subtle body is gone. Along with it, the
Even spiritual.
jivatma is gone.
Spiritual consciousness. So Sunil, get back to our discussion of Ishvara, Jagat, and Jiva. So wherever there is Atma, there is consciousness. You agree on that point, Sunil?
Atma, yes, there is sentiency, but I was little disturbed using I was using the word as consciousness to define consciousness as God, SIP. I think there's I'm falling short of explaining. I think I was distinguishing between awareness and consciousness. Awareness is a subset of universal consciousness.
Okay, but let us not lose the plot.
Yes.
We are moving in the right direction, Sunil. So even a dog and a frog, they have consciousness.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I wanted to say that even every jiva has got consciousness.
Yeah,
and
even a tree, even a tree. Okay, so remember this.
Awareness.
The level of consciousness may be different in a dog and in a amoeba, but there is consciousness. So this is what we are now coming. We are coming back to the Atma. It is in the Atma that consciousness appears, and in the Atma the consciousness disappears. Chandra Guptan, thank you, Sunil. If there's something, come back. Chandra Guptan. Now your question, sir.
Sir, question I am answering. Consciousness is the awareness of awareness means awareness of a single person about his body and his surroundings. Consciousness is the awareness of the totality, particularly the whole universe, whole existence. Particular person attains after some meditation or some level. This is what I read from this gurus. That is, consciousness is a very base of the whole existence. Whoever able to touch that, they able to see. What your example is that somebody sleeping in somewhere outside in your home, and you are waking up from your office. Physically, it is not possible with awareness, but who is having the consciousness, who has have the able to touch the level of consciousness through telepathy, they will be able to touch their consciousness and able to get them up. That is what I feel.
So, with all due respect,
I don't know
what you're
able
saying,
the exact definition, but still I could
no,
whatever.
dear,
Okay.
dear Chandra Guptan, you have said the right thing, except the last point of yours. What you have said is the right thing, and you said something very beautifully. Chandra Guptan brought a very good point. You're new to this call, or you have been attending, or the first time you have come, sir?
First time, sir.
Okay, welcome to the call. So Chandra Guptan brought something very good. What he says, consciousness is that awareness. But one point which he said, it came very fast. I want to bring out what beautifully he said, that we become conscious not just of the body, but also we become conscious of the mind. We become conscious of our thoughts, our feelings, of the awareness is the complete consciousness. And even Ru Mataji brought a very beautiful point. At that time, I put it down, but she had a very valid point of Ru Mataji of the connection of consciousness and enlightenment. But somehow it didn't come out in the right way. But there is a connection, because it is in this consciousness only that enlightenment takes place. It is the aparoksh anubhuti, what Chandra Guptan is talking about. It is not easy. This, unless there is this complete awareness. Ru Mataji, I don't know whether she's still on the call or not. Ru Mataji, ab hai kya? So but when Ru Mataji spoke, I took it based on her words, that if you're everybody who has consciousness will have enlightenment. No, that is not possible.
जी गुरुजी.
Ru Mataji, आपने ऐसा बोला था, तो I'm just correcting it, okay? आपके कहने में ऐसा आ गया, आपने बोला जिसको भी consciousness है वो उसको enlightenment हो सकता है. But the other way is true. जिसको भी enlightenment चाहिए, उसको consciousness पहले चाहिए. नहीं तो enlightenment नहीं हो सकता है.
जी.
So I don't know whether you meant to say that or you meant to say something.
Yes, same thing.
Okay, thank you. Who's Jazz? Piku Jazz. Yes, please, your question. Piku Jazz. Please unmute and ask your question. Piku Jazz. Hello, Piku Jazz. Is there somebody asking a question? Yes,
hello,
Piku Jazz.
Namaskar, sir. My name is Priyanka.
Priyanka.
Hello. My name is Priyanka. Sorry, my ID has got the old email ID. So
no problem. Yeah. What's your question?
So my question is it's related to the conscious, as you are saying to everyone. So what I was thinking was like, what I thought is like conscious, what my knowledge is like conscious means that which hurts when everything else is feeling great. Is this correct? Is the conscious like when we actually speak? Hello, can you hear me?
I missed one point. Everything is getting?
Consciousness means which hurts when everything else, which hurts when everything else is feeling, or everyone else is feeling great.
I'm not getting. Are you hearing her clearly? What is she saying?
The word is hurt.
The word?
Yeah, she's saying hurt when everybody else is feeling great.
But there's nothing about consciousness is nothing to do with hurt.
Nothing to do with hurt?
No, nothing to do with hurt.
Okay.
See, consciousness. Okay, before we end the call, today I brought up this point, my dear friends, because when you're in this journey of enlightenment, you will reach a situation where people will say, what is this nonsense consciousness? What is this nonsense? Like, you know, I want to, before I come to consciousness, I'm taking a break for 1 minute. And I'm telling you, that day, when we were having an important discussion versus Guru and God, and somebody wrote me a very personal note. Somebody wrote a very personal note and said, you have disgraced that shloka, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara. How can you, such a pious shloka, how could you disrespect that? No, I didn't disrespect it. I just said Guru is very, very important. Have I ever said Guru is not important? I said without Guru, you can't get enlightenment. But I said to compare, to say Guru is Brahma, Guru is Vishnu, Guru is Maheshwara, we should not try to demean SIP. The supreme immortal power is beyond the Guru. The Guru is just a small particle. So when we talk in this call, please don't misinterpret or misunderstand, because then you will feel that what I'm speaking is something either disrespectful. No, my style of saying sometimes may imply that, but that's not what I mean, right? So, because I don't know who knows the second part of that. Who knows the second part of that shloka? Anybody knows the meaning?
Dasmai Sri Guruve Namaha.
What's the meaning of that?
I respect that Guru.
But that actually is something that translation may not seem to be correct. It actually means that the Guru is a manifestation of SIP and we are all SIP. So I just wanted to clarify that I didn't mean any disrespect for any shloka. And today thank you for giving that input, my dear friends. Today, before we close, I want you all to be clear. When science is talking of consciousness and saying there's no consciousness, science does not accept rebirth. Science does not even accept the fact of a soul or a divine spirit or Atma. Then how is this whole thing working? Science just believes that everything is either coming from a Big Bang theory or Darwin's evolution, that apes or monkeys have become a man. Now we on the spiritual journey, we want to be little aware of certain things. For example, consciousness. Consciousness comes from the Atma, comes from the spirit, comes from the soul. Therefore, we should not get carried away by just some scientific statement. That if a child is born dead, what do the doctors say? I regret to inform you the child is dead. But what happened to the child? If every brain and human body should be like a scientific machine, then why should there be a child born dead? No child should be born dead. Every child should live for 60, 70, 80 years. Or for that matter, nobody should die at 30 or 40 or 50. What is this moment of death when we lose the spirit and we lose the consciousness? So there is consciousness. We must, and when you're sleeping, you're not awake, you're not sleeping, and sometimes you get up from your sleep and you say, I had such a beautiful sleep. Huh? Who had a sleep? How did you know you had a beautiful sleep? It is your consciousness. It is that consciousness in you which experiences nothingness. And that nothingness is the bliss you enjoy in your sleep. So, I don't understand any of the comments. Are there you need me to answer?
Yes, I'll quickly go through the comments. There are some comments.
Yeah.
Another one says, being aware about awareness is consciousness.
Yeah, but let's not have tongue twisters. Being aware of awareness is a good statement, but let us understand. That is being aware of everything, So rather being still. Consciousness is about being in that state of thoughtlessness. Because when, in fact, when you're in a state of too many thoughts, you lose consciousness. The consciousness is there. You're biologically, you have the conscious, you're alive, but there is no awareness. So understand that the profound meaning of spiritual awareness or spiritual consciousness. Sometimes we make some foolish decisions. We make some very foolish decisions. It's very simple. We should choose A and we should not choose B. But we choose B. We choose B because we have lost consciousness. And our mind is making a fool of us. And this is later we realize, oh, why did I do this nonsense? I did this nonsense because I lost my awareness. I was alive. Had a soul, but I lost my consciousness. Very tricky. It's a little tricky for you to understand. So please try to contemplate today, what is this meaning of consciousness? It's not so easy to understand. So today I'm introducing the concept to you, but very important for enlightenment. Continue, Administrator.
Champion says, I think the soul is consciousness, he is awareness.
The soul is not consciousness, but in the soul's presence, consciousness appears. It is only when there is the soul, then only consciousness appears. But the soul is not conscious. It is the soul that creates the consciousness. But then the mind steals the consciousness. Soul is still there. Where did the consciousness go? We lose consciousness. We become ignorant. So try to understand that soul doesn't go, but consciousness goes. We lose consciousness, but we don't lose the soul. Continue, Administration.
Last one, Yogini says, state of ordinary to extraordinary is consciousness.
Good. She's picked it probably from the status, I think. But
yes, sir. This was the status in the morning I read.
Very
so
good.
I wanted to understand that.
Very good. So Yogini wants to understand that. Let me explain to Yogini. See, when you are when you're a person who is trapped by the mind, you move from extraordinary to ordinary. But when you are a person who is in consciousness, then that person moves from ordinary to extraordinary. I hope, Yogini, you understood it. Today morning status was very profound. I got this status in Kashmir when I was at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I was just awake. And what makes a person from ordinary to extraordinary? Most often, it is a state of consciousness. And what can make a person from extraordinary, downgraded to ordinary? It is a state of mind.
Mind, right.
So when you remember this, when you are in a state of mind, then you are in for trouble. You're in for trouble because your mind will make you do the wrong things.
Correct.
But when you're in state of consciousness, you will do the right things. Thank you for ending this session with a beautiful way. I bow down to you and we'll see you tomorrow at 8.